the IRGC and the Besiege has moved weapons out of those areas and placed them in other civilian things like hospitals and schools. They actually have co-opted hospital schools and turned them into HQs. The other part, this goes to the point you're regarding how like members of the autocratic bloc, whether it's Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, Chinese Communist Party, Mullah regime, North Korean regime, etc., are coordinating their efforts to try and leverage the finite nature of critical munitions like long range strike munitions. So, if we hit the Mullah regime, well, we don't have as many long range strike munitions and interceptors and the rest of it to deal with. Chinese Communist Party's, attempt at invading Taiwan, Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state punching or attacking elements of Europe. So one of the things we looked at to kind of like offset some of that, and this I can say, is after we use some long range munitions, whether it's tomahawks or, you know, JASMs and all that kind of stuff, is inert munitions, which means you take the explosives out of a bomb, you keep the strapped on GPS kind of guidance system and just turn it into a very large lawn dart. We actually did that in both the first and second Gulf War, and that was to divest the Ba'athist regime from trying to leverage non-combatants as part of like their urban shield strategy or human shield. So they, the idea being to turn any tactical victory where you kill them into a strategic soft power defeat, because then they go, oh my God, look, oh, America killed all these people, they're doing this to be mean and all this other shit. So those are definitely real issues, to be sure. There's a reason Secretary of War Pete Hegseth put us on a war footing to produce, like, on a crash program to produce critical interceptors and long range strike munitions. Now you're seeing that in the news in the open. Even with those constraints, and those are some things that we obviously have to take into account, which is another reason why we're putting another additional carrier battle group in the area that can service those targets, because now you can use, instead of using more critical long range strike munitions, now you can use a higher sustained tempo from your aircraft carriers and lesser critical munitions to take out or service said targets. So concern, yes. Does that mean that the Mullah regime doesn't have to go? No, like they have to go. That piece has to be taken off the board. Not the least of which is that, again, I would contend a lot of analysts, it's a pretty broad consensus amongst analysts that are in the opening stages of a high intensity world war anyway. And so the chances of turning it off is very low. All of our enemies know that. So they're trying to bleed us out of as much of our capability as they can. You have to weigh relative risk. The Mullah regime is a pseudo-theologically motivated actor. They're absolutely bug nuts crazy, and they are going to pursue nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and all the rest of their horrible shit no matter what, which means they got to go. And so we're getting ready to make sure they go. Right? I mean, like the stuff they're trying at the most recent, discussion was like a discussion to discussion. It's all bullshit. Like maybe they potentially reduce their enrichment to 60% for like 3 years, or outsource it to a third party like Russia or China. Like all it just means is it's not you, that the Mullah regime is trying to find ways to ensure its breakout capability and somehow sucker President Trump into believing that they're somehow are going to hold true to any deal that they make. I promise you, President Trump's not a sucker. And I guarantee you there are many within the administration that almost everybody sees that they're full of shit. So, not saying, I guess, to come back to the point you made, those are real issues that the Mullah regime and or their patron states, Putin's criminalized counterintelligence, Chinese Communist Party, are trying to leverage to bump the cost as high as they can. We're also modifying our stuff on the fly to counter their counter, which is why you have a second carrier battle group going into theater.
Okay. Who's next, BT?
Okay, next we have Samantha.
Samantha.
Why should anyone respect Syria's border integrity?
What? Say that again, louder.
Why should anyone respect Syria's border integrity?
Why should anyone respect Syria's border integrity? respect Syria's border integrity. Okay, right now we don't have Syria is like a can of expired dog food that you don't, if you basically open it, it's going to stink up the entire room, and like it's going to cause like it's going to make everyone uncomfortable. So you just basically need to keep the lid on it so that it doesn't basically get everybody else dragged into a mess, right? So even though it's very chaotic and it doesn't seem like a real country, and so like a Frankenstein monster, and so many different pieces that don't belong to each other have been pushed next to each other and they called it a country, the thing is that the alternative is that if it falls apart, then it's going to affect everyone. So I'm not saying that we will succeed holding it together, but I do understand why the attempt is being made, because even though it's a mess right now, the mess that will result from it completely falling apart will be more chaotic than even the chaos that we're dealing with right now. Does that make sense? Oh, okay, so she's saying yes. She gave it a thumbs up. Okay.
Okay, next we have Sammy Bonanno.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I just want to say hi to everyone. I'm new in the group. I'm actually a second generation Iranian. We never lived in Iran. I have a quick question. There's this YouTube channel called JNS. I don't know if you are aware of it, with Emily Schrader. Okay.
Yeah, I've been a
Anyway,
guest there. Have you not
yeah,
seen my
okay.
show there as a
No,
guest?
I haven't
Yeah.
seen. But anyway, there's a segment. She has a bunch of people.
We
They
love
talk
we
about
love I think I think most people here love Emily, but go
yeah,
on.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
they talk about the scumbag of the week. Like with the guests, and she had this Iranian Jewish actress who played in Tehran, and it was her turn, and she was saying, "My scumbag who could maybe like redeem themselves is the Artesh, because they don't seem to be doing anything because they're supposed to be the people's army." So what's your view on that? Like true in Iran, like there's the IRGC, the Basij, the Artesh. Like who's the largest group? Who has the most power?
So okay, so those are two different questions. I think if I remember correctly, the Artesh has more people than the IRGC, but the IRGC has more power because they get funding more. They're not just a military unit, they're an economic. So for people who might not have the context, in Iran, the Islamic Republic has two branches of the military. There's two units of the military. It's the IRGC and the Artesh. The IRGC was created after the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The Artesh predates the Islamic Revolution and it's historic, and it was our army in Iran during the Shah's time, during the Pahlavi dynasty. So I think the number of people that are in the Artesh are more than the people in the IRGC, but the IRGC is a lot more powerful. And every year, if you look at the government budget, they cut something from the Artesh and they keep adding more to the IRGC. The IRGC is a lot more ideological. It's a lot more for the Islamic Revolution rather than for Iran. The Artesh's main duty is to protect Iran's border integrity, but the IRGC's mission statement is to make the whole world Islamic. And the IRGC has, beyond just being a military, they're also control 2/3 of Iran's economy, right? They're basically involved with in 2/3 of Iran's economy right now, and they control also they're the main power within the politics as well. I would say some people say Khamenei is the greatest. The office of the supreme leadership is the greatest political power in Iran. I disagree with that. I think it's the IRGC. So when it comes to who's on what side, we have to cut these two into four pieces, right? So we have the body of the IRGC, we have the head of IRGC, we have the body of the Artesh, and we have the head of the Artesh. So in the past couple of decades or so, the past couple of years, the Islamic Republic has completely removed the generals of the Artesh that were basically there based on merit and knew what they were doing and might have been more loyal to the Iranian people. They have removed them. And now the leaders of the Artesh are basically just IRGC. So the leaders of IRGC and the leaders of Artesh are basically the same scumbags, and there's no hope for any of them. But when it comes to the body, the IRGC, within the body of the IRGC, you could expect to find a lot more Islamically radical minded people within the IRGC on average compared to the Artesh. But if some people have some hope for the Artesh, it's not because of the current leaders, but maybe because many people think that within the body of Artesh, there's so many people that are there that are still loyal to the Iranian people instead of the Islamic Republic. So they're hoping that at some point during the revolution against the Islamic Republic, when the Islamic Republic falls or it's getting close to falling, the Artesh comes and starts defending the people and defend them against the Islamic Republic, which will basically be the end of the revolution and will mean that the revolution has been victorious. That's when usually you consider a revolution to be victorious, is when a major part of the armed forces basically stops fighting the people and either claims to be neutral or starts defending the people against the oppressive regime. I don't know, I think what you're referring to, if I understood you correctly, is that a lot of people were disappointed with the Artesh because during the massacre that the Islamic Republic did in early January, we didn't see anybody from the Artesh coming in and maybe protecting the Iranian people. Is that what you're referring to, Sami?
So again, that's the name of the actress that was talking. She said they're supposed to be the people's army, so she was kind of disappointed as to why they haven't really done anything to defend and protect the people, since they have
So
like
what
you
I've heard, and this needs to be confirmed, is that the Islamic Republic, when the revolution was starting, they disarmed the Artesh.
know? Okay.
And we did see videos of people meeting, people, the armed forces, some armed forces, where where they were waving at people, joining like next side by side next to the people, and they didn't have any guns or they weren't armed, right? So the Artesh is very mistrusted by the Islamic Republic, so their access to weapon is usually very much controlled. So if this is true that the Artesh is disarmed, and that would do two things. First of all, it will, if this is an if, okay, this will then give us a reason for why they couldn't come and protect the Iranian people. Two, it might also then it also would confirm that they are on the side of the Iranian people, or else the Islamic Republic wouldn't be afraid of them. Why would they have to take such measures if the Islamic Republic wasn't afraid of them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so that is the completion of our original list. Though if there was time, Ali S. and Drew D. had a second question. And then Armin, don't forget that you had something else for us as well.
Okay. So who's talking now?
So we can move on to Ali S.
Ali S. Okay.
Hi. How much time
Ali?
would you say? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, how much time would you say you have left to answer this question?
I have time. Tell me, what's the
Okay.
question?
I was just wondering. So I'm in the same boat as Emmerich. I want to go there. I want to go to Iran and help. So I was just wondering, it would be a kind of fun question for you. If you were 25 years old and you know everything that you know now, and this opportunity is happening in 2026, what would you do?
Am I married?
Oh yeah, clarification. You are not married. You do not have a mortgage or kids. You have nothing that ties you down.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it, because whenever I'm making life decisions, the first thing that comes to my mind is my family, right? So I've never even exercised not thinking about them. So this would be like
I mean, I
hard
can
to.
ask this the next discussion.
I would go to Iran. I would move to Iran, and I would start a studio there, right? Yeah, I have the answer. Okay, so I will go to Iran. I will have my YouTube. I will keep doing the YouTube. Do this. What I like to do is basically talk about ideas and talk to other people who are interested in philosophy and politics and religion and history, and try to come up with the best ideas on how to make a society prosper. So, and I think the best way to do that is through live shows and YouTube and stuff like that. So I would just want to continue doing that. But if then I would move to Iran, and I would bring mullahs, right? I would bring previous regime followers. I would bring communists. I would bring people, cessationists. I will have debate shows. I will basically bring them and debate them live on air, face to face, and I will just turn into a discussion show. And I will basically travel from city to city, go to Qom, go find the mullahs there, try to do like uh, documentaries with them over their religious upbringing and what turned them into a mullah, and if they change their mind after the fall of the Islamic Republic. I would get very much involved in political discussions. I will basically try to do a lot of discussions, live discussions in my studio inside Iran regarding the political history of the modern world, of the French Revolution, the American Revolution, everything that happened after the Cold War, all the greatest political thinkers of after the French Revolution, and how their views affected society and what we could learn from it to rebuild Iran from everything else that other people went through. I would do a lot of economic discussions regarding the greatest economic theories and the great thinkers and everything that has been tried all around the world, and do an empirical analysis of what works and what doesn't work, and discuss that with people who disagree with me. I would like to debate, people who have more of a mindset that the government needs to be involved in, because I'm a limited government kind of guy when it comes to economy. I would like to debate people who disagree with me on this topic. I would go to Iran and basically challenge different people who disagree with me on their ideas, and try to advocate for the ideas that would make Iran prosper.
All right, thank you. So yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I like to I like I basically just like to explore ideas and figure out what works. And I like to do it with other people. I like to do basically what I'm doing here right now with you guys, but maybe inside Iran. Yeah. But continue. Yeah. Let's go.
Okay, wonderful. So next we have Drew D.
For my second question, it was just more of a military question. So Iran is in a really geographically important area. I think a lot of Americans don't really understand that, by the way. And so by the US getting bases in Iran, which Prince Reza Pahlavi has talked about in the past, it puts a lot of pressure on China from the west, and also southern Russia, a lot of pressure on Afghanistan, Pakistan, but with that is obviously going to be confrontational to those countries. So, how would you like the timeline to work with the US coming in with potential military bases so Iran doesn't look like a puppet of the US, but also doesn't wait too long where, the East can come in and start influencing Iran and undermine the revolution?
But so I don't think it's a matter of time. So let me clarify. Let me understand what your question is. You're saying when it comes to United States attacking the Islamic Republic, which seems to be happening, you're suggesting that the timing of that will change the impression on whether or not the new government in Iran is a puppet of United States or not.
Uh,
And you think if they come too early, it would be more likely that they would be seen as a puppet. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm talking after the regime is toppled, putting US bases in
Oh.
Iran, and that'll help
Oh.
strengthen the regime. But if we do it right away, then you start to look like a puppet of the US. But if you wait too long, then you let influence from other countries come in. So, what do you think about that kind of timeline and how that should go?
Other than for the sites that where their enrichment of uranium is happening, and just so that they make sure that they. Other than that, I mean, is Gary here? Because other than that, I don't see this happening in anywhere else.
No, Gary
But the
left.
Oh, okay, okay. So why do you think that this is inevitable that United States is going to have military bases inside Iran?
I did hear that Reza
Jeff-
Pahlavi had talked about that in the past, that he would
No,
denuclearize
no, no, no.
and that he
Oh,
would open up for U.S. bases to be in Iran. Yeah, I was looking at it.
I think we're talking about international observers. That doesn't require military bases. I think Americans will not like that themselves. Like to, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if it's based on both countries agreeing, and they have some agreements with each other, and has nothing to do with like invasion, just like they have bases. I don't know, in South Korea and Germany, like something like that. That could be helpful to bring stability to Iran before we have our own army strengthened. I don't think the timing of it is going to change, make that much. I think it's going to be based on need, right? I think if it is demonstrated, if we could see that, okay, building our army is taking longer than we were hoping for, and we have some major challenges that we're not able to deal with right now because we're just trying to stabilize everything right now and it's chaotic. Maybe if we observe that, then there's going to be more both international and internal tolerance for it. But if they don't see that, and by the way, I'm going to ask Jeffrey this before. I'm just going to guess this before we get an expert to actually answer this. Jeffrey, you're here, right? I'm just looking at it from a more of a from a political, because from a military perspective, I'm sure Jeffrey will be able to answer that. But I'm just saying, like internally within Iran, would people welcome that? And I think that if you just say from the beginning, without giving the new Artesh a shot, if you were like, oh yeah, guys, by the way, we can't do this, so let's just bring the Americans. I think that is going to be seen as negative. Like, how do you know we can't do this? Like, don't you want to give us like a shot? I think if you give us, if we give us a shot and we see like, okay, yep, we need help, then there's going to be internal acceptance of like we need help. But if you just start with the assumption that we can't do this, so let's just bring the Americans, I think internally many people might hate that. And I would be more concerned about Iranian people's view on things rather than the rest of the world. Once we remove the Islamic Republic, we don't really need that much of a permission from other people regarding how we do our internal politics. But I would be more focused on making sure that the Iranian people are satisfied and they think that we are in, like, they feel like this is a good independent nation state with a state that is actually doing what the Iranian people want. So the priority is to satisfy the Iranian people. And if we get that, either the rest of the world should follow, because if they see the Iranian people want this, what the state is doing is what the Iranian people want, then either they should respect that, and if they don't, well, then we shouldn't care much about their opinion anyways, right? So and again, politically satisfying the Iranian people, I think, if I'm guessing this right now, I think that if we first give it a shot before we do this, when Iranian people see observe the need for it, then they will be tolerant, they will be accepting of it. Jeffrey, what do you think?
I know that His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi, has outlined he wants cooperation with the United States, and he did ask for democratic transition and security assurances, meaning he's asking, at least from what I've seen, I might be wrong in this, a roundabout way to ensure that regional meddlers don't undermine the stability and transition as Iranians liberated, Iranians who have been liberated from the Mullah regime's oppression, ultimately decide what kind of government they want. Now, that being said, as far as like having air bases there and the utility of that, well, of course. I mean, like if in a post Mullah regime republic, that's aligned with the United States and they allow U.S. air bases, it would dramatically enhance the United States power projection across the Middle East, Central Asia, and near Russia's southern flank. And it would also counterbalance the Chinese Communist Party's growing regional footprint. As you pointed out, such a move might carry some risk of escalation, as Moscow and Beijing would likely view it as strategic encirclement. Then again, the tooth and like the gloves are off and the teeth and claws are out anyway. So, they would probably try to undermine stability. So, if the United States were to support a democratic transition and provide security assurances in a post-Islamic Republic Iran, the utility would be more political and stabilizing than pure military, as Armin had said. U.S. support could help prevent a power vacuum. It could reduce risk of civil war and discourage interference by Putin or Xi during the fragile transition period. That's why we kind of talked about, I mentioned this at the beginning of this particular talk today, about the fact that the United States has over 20 years experience in counterinsurgency via the global war on terror. And it would behoove probably both Iranians and the United States, everybody, to leverage that experience to help set up, say, Iran's version, like post Mullah Iran's version of the Department of Homeland Security. This isn't, then again, the any number of meddlers are like, oh, see, they're setting up a puppet state. No, we're not setting up a puppet state. We're just trying to make sure that a post Mullah Iran isn't vulnerable to like Islamic fundamentalist terrorists trying to repeat the horrible shit the Red Black Alliance did right prior to and indeed leading up and directly contributing to the fall of the Shah and robbing the Iranian people of the Shah's bold, push towards developing Iran into a nation of tolerant modernity. So I mean, it's a valid point. I'm not saying there isn't geopolitical and geostrategic event or if we were to have air bases there, he's probably thinking something akin to a particular air base that was in Afghanistan that allowed us to maintain eyes on a certain particular base in China, where China does a lot of its ballistic missile, nuclear weapons production and testing, something along those lines. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I've not seen anything from His Highness Reza Pahlavi stating that he wants like U.S. air bases in Iran. I have heard that he definitely wants to have assistance with ensuring the stability during the transition, which is only reasonable. I mean, this isn't to say that we're involved to select or to affect what government Iranians ultimately select. Rather, we're trying to make sure that you don't have other hostile actors like Putin or Xi try to disrupt the transition because they're pissed they lost one of their proxies. We want to ensure the autonomy of Iranian people's selection of whatever government they ultimately choose to have.
I was also thinking like long term too, how we have bases in Germany and Poland and like where those are friendly countries. It's, there's
And
no
Iraq,
question.
for example.
Yeah, the only thing is that's like a different thing because we did go in and invade Iraq where
We didn't invade Iraq. That's not true. We liberated Iraq. Invasion is a very specific term with a very specific geopolitical definition, which is forced territorial cessation. We did not conquer Iraq, and we don't have colonies in Iraq.
Okay,
That's
well, we came in with a military force into Iraq, which
But I do, now that I think about it, because Prince Reza like, I do think that we probably are going to have at some point military bases for like not just for the transition, not for the transition period, but after the transition period.
right.
Like, if you are Iran will become a U.S. ally, and United States usually has military bases in countries that are allies with, right? And I think the bases will be seen as a military cooperation. It wouldn't be sold as like, oh, they're here to control us. They're like, we're US. I mean, Iranians love America. Okay, Iranians love America. It's their number one favorite country. And I think right now Israel is like at number two okay, after
You're saying
America,
it'd
right?
be Iranian
But they
bases
love
run by Iranians that we could use, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the Iranian people are going to see it as military cooperation with our major ally America. They're not going to see it as being controlled by them, and everybody's going to be like, look, Germany, South Korea, they have military bases, so they're not being South Korea is not being controlled by America, but they have military bases in South Korea. So I think those examples are going to be used as a way to suggest that this is like. And again, after the transitional period, Prince Reza Pahlavi is not in full control anymore, right? So after the transition period is not Prince Reza Pahlavi, if he becomes king, he's going to be in charge of the things that we decide the king is responsible for, right? And for example, he's not going to be in charge of our foreign policy. He's not going to be in charge of like passing the what laws that gets passed in Iran, right? So is a, I mean, he's still going to be influential, but his influence is going to be much more limited. Okay, yeah, we need to
Armin,
move
we
on
have
because
3 minutes and we are closing out with a hard stop. Could you go ahead and close us out with what you wanted to say earlier, please?
yes, I just quickly wanted to talk about Saudi Arabia because and how what is their interest right now when it comes to the fall of the Islamic Republic, whether it's for or against, and how they are going to be impacted by the fall of the Islamic Republic and the return of Pahlavi to Iran and Iran becoming a secular democracy. Whether this is going to benefit Saudi Arabia or it's going to hurt them, whether they welcome this or they're very much afraid of it. A lot of people talk about how bad this is going to be for Saudi Arabia, but there are also benefits, and I think within Saudi Arabia we have both positions.